out, I want to take a moment now to introduce our fantastic speaker for tonight, Yvonne Ruke. I can never get the last one. Akpoveta. That's it. I get there. But Yvonne, fantastic thought process, fantastic insights on the way that change impacts people, organizations, and the world at large. She calls herself a change strategist and advisor. I'd say she's many more things than that. So I've known Yvonne for several years, and she really is an advocate for people embracing change leadership as a tool for them taking things forward, and something that she truly believes from her heart and her head that needs to go forward. Lots of experience that she's got, and I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic presentation from her tonight. If there's anything more that Yvonne wants to introduce about herself and her experience and everything, I'll let her do that side of things. But I'm really thrilled to have Yvonne kicking us off with our very first session tonight on our journey through the whole of ACMP's presence in the province. So without further ado, I'm going to actually go quiet. I may type a little bit in the chat box as we go along, and I'm going to ask for the technology to pass over ownership and accountability to Yvonne to take things forward.
Thank you so much, Rich. Can you guys hear me okay now?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you, Yvonne.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. Love that introduction. It shows you know a little bit about me. I'm excited to be here today. I hope everybody's doing great in light of the whole circumstances that we're going through. Definitely going through a cycle of change, as we would like to say in our field. But all the same, excited to have everybody here and to be sharing and to be presenting today. So welcome everybody to today's session. I want to get to know people a little bit. So people know me. I want to get to know people a little bit. I also want to do a little bit of polling. It's difficult to ask people questions in this new virtual world, and I see their faces, or we do a poll in the class, so ask everybody to raise their hands. So I'm going to do it virtually today. So I have my first question that I want to see and do a gauge for, what we have here. So first question here on the screen. Do you need to be in a position of authority to effectively lead change or be a change leader? Let's see what the response is like. Okay. Okay. So we have looking for more. So I have about 10 seconds to give some people a chance to respond. I love these answers coming in. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's to get a sense of the audience. About 10 more seconds. I think we have a poll going. So that's that. I will end the poll and I will show the results. So this is kind of what people thought. The results. So we had 13% people saying yes, and we had 87% saying no. Okay. And then I have another question for you. So this is to get our energy going. Are you able to define the difference between being a change leader or a change manager? I get this question a lot. People asking the difference, different responses. So would like to see what people think. Okay, so it's nearly a 50-50. We'll give it about 10 more seconds and we close the poll. Okay. and end the poll and share the results. Nearly a 50-50. So we have nearly 50% who say yes, they can differentiate it, and sometimes struggle. And one person say no. And one more poll before we get started. Do you consider yourself a change leader? Okay. Let's see some more answers coming in. Interesting stats. More answers. Maybe I should have had one option, therefore I don't want to answer at this time. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And I will share the results. So we have quite a few people who consider themselves as a change leader, and maybe. Okay, awesome. So thanks everybody for sharing with me. I'm excited to be here today to talk about leading change in a time of crisis. We're going through a pandemic now. We're going through essentially a crisis. And I want to say it's scary, but right now I'm so full of curiosity and really looking forward to this pandemic being over, and when it's over, to see what lessons really come out of it. But one of the things that I've been doing right now is truly just taking notes. I'm seeing different things, I'm taking notes, and that's what I want to discuss with us today. And my key example case study that I'm going to use as we talk through this is our current crisis, what we're seeing here in Canada, using our leaders as some examples and global leaders as examples or case studies as we talk about it. Anybody that knows me knows I'm very passionate about change. You wake me up and in the night and I will talk change and I will light up. It's just my passion area. I can geek out on change. I can get excited about it at the drop of a hat. Even before getting on this call today and presentation, I was really tired. But now I have so much energy just at the thought of what I'm going to discuss today. So really excited about this. Now I'm going to get into the presentation. The thing about leading change and being a leader is that it doesn't happen all of a sudden when crisis comes. It's the preparation that we do beforehand that makes a whole load of difference. And it's also saying, who do we consider to be a change leader? The reason I asked some of those questions at the beginning of the poll or the beginning of the session today was oftentimes people feel very powerless or they don't see themselves as change leaders. Sometimes people even wonder what's the difference between a change manager and a change leader. And just to answer that very quickly for a few people that had a maybe, a change manager is somebody who would manage the day-to-day tactical minutiae of leading and driving change on their projects. They may follow a methodology, they may follow a certain approach. It's very specific in terms of what they're doing, but it's very tactical and hands-on and oftentimes methodology driven. While a change leader is somebody who has a much wider vision of what's happening and it's not necessarily tactical. And we're going to go through who that change leader is and what that change leader looks like. But one thing though is that everybody who owns the title as change manager in their day-to-day job is a change leader, because you cannot effectively manage change on your project as a change manager or within your organization or your initiative without also being a change leader. So every change manager is a change leader. And one of the things that I personally advocate for, and the change leadership as an organization, we say is that the change leader, or who a change leader is no longer reserved for position. It's no longer reserved for that person who is at the head of the organization leading. It's no longer reserved for the manager. In a time of crisis, in a time of fast-paced change, in a time of disruptive technology, everybody is required to be a leader. And most especially in a time of crisis right now, whether you're in a position of authority or not, we all have the ability to be change leaders in what it is we're doing. So your role might be directly leading change in your organization and responsible for a team. You may not have a team that you're responsible for. Maybe you're a change manager. You can still lead that change, and you can still support your organization to lead that change. You can still support your leaders in a position of authority to lead that change. You may be a SME on the project, you may be a subject matter expert, or see yourself as just an individual member of the team, and you're saying, I'm powerless, what can I do? You can still learn these skills and use them from anywhere. You can learn these skills to help support your organization, because at times your leaders are looking to you, or your colleagues are looking to you to help support them. And what we go through today is going to be, what can you do to lead that change, and what can you do to support the people around you to lead that change? So we all have the power to be able to do it. And for some people, it might be a little bit too late right now to be very effective, but you might feel, what I learned today, I can definitely use, because guess what? We are going to keep on changing. There's going to be a lot of disruptions. There's going to be a lot of the unexpected. I personally feel that we're just going through our first cycle of change. And what we're seeing now demonstrated in the case study of the pandemic is true leadership being revealed by the leaders or people around us. So what does it take to be a change leader? I've gone into the difference I feel and I believe between a change leader and a change manager. And that's a whole separate training that I do when I train other people or give talks on change leadership. But so today I'm just going to lightly just touch on what it means, or I have already lightly touched on the difference, but I'm going to go in today to what it takes to be a change leader, to lead in this time of crisis. The first thing I want to share is about being empathetic. So I'm going to share 10 points today about what it takes to be a change leader. It starts with people first. You have to be empathetic. You have to understand your stakeholders. And this is even before understanding your stakeholders. You have to have a heart for people. Before you can lead anybody to where it is they want to go, you have to have the buy-in from their heart. People will follow people that they feel have a true concern for them and their circumstances. People make up the organization. An organization cannot exist in silo of one person or just the leader. So the very first thing that you or I or everybody needs to do is have a people first mentality, saying that the person matters, the people matter. At this point in time, leaders are struggling, or if you're a manager, or even if you have your workers, I'm going through different types of emotion. People are motivated, people are scared. There are all types of emotions people are experiencing now. But leaders also have that responsibility where they're thinking, what about the deliverables? What about the survival of this organization? How do I get people to work? If you show concern for people first and lead from the heart to inspire people, then people feel bought into your goals to want to be able to support you. There's so many examples now whereby there's an opportunity to see, is somebody a real leader when you get on a conference call or when you get on a video call? Are you irritated when people have their kids jump on the line or the dog starts barking? Are you asking people how they're feeling? Are you putting that as priority? Or are you saying, I need the deliverables done, chop, 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 where's this? Why haven't you done it? I had an example of a leader when all of this crisis first started. The first thing he said to his people when they were forced, I say forced to work from home because he wasn't comfortable with them working from home. He said to some of his direct leads, oh, can you please make sure that checking that people are working every 30 minutes. That's just, it wasn't about checking to see how people are doing. It was checking to see that people are working every 30 minutes. That just lost him total respect with his team because they felt all he is concerned about is the work and the job. In a situation like that, where do you think their loyalty would lie? Is it with getting the job done because this person is interested in my well-being? Or is it in, look, I'm not ready to do this, I really don't care because this leader doesn't care for me. So people will do things for a leader that they feel cares about them. So the very first thing is being empathetic to different people and different situations and understanding where is they're coming from. Empathy is very important. The second one I want to share is knowing your stakeholders. This is the first one. Actually, let me go back a little bit. Before we get to know our stakeholders, one of the things is we have to, I brought out this curve and we've shared it on the Change Leadership page. But this is a very good way right now to start to see where people are and understand that people are at different points. We have people who are introverts versus people who are extroverts. We have people who are really struggling with this, what we're going through. So as a change leader, or even as a change manager, or wherever you are, or where you have people working with you, or whoever your colleagues are, or even at home, you have to realize that people are going through this curve at different places. We're all humans. This Kubler-Ross change curve comes from way back, and it was originally done from a place of grieving, how people grieve when they lose somebody. But right now, we are also going through a grieving process. We're grieving the loss of a loved one, and that's where some of us may be. Some of us are grieving the loss of job. Some of us are just grieving the loss of even our independence, our control. We're going through different emotions right now. So while you may see some people, they're already in the experiment and decision and thinking they're in their new normal, some people are still going through shock and denial and still saying, I can't believe this is happening to me. If as a change leader, you're able to realize that people are going through this curve at different points in time. Some people have been working from home for the longest time, so they were just like, let's get it on. But some people are still trying to get their mind around all of this. They're still trying to think, is my job going to remain? Some people are already far ahead and thinking, what's going to happen after the pandemic? If as a change leader, you can realize that people are going through different areas of this curve, then you're able to better connect with them and meet them at where they are. So you have to realize your team is uniquely different. Each person in your team is uniquely different. So understanding where they are on this curve helps you understand them. On the right-hand side of the table I have, or the curve I have, shows some of the strategies that you can use to help you manage and deal with some of the issues that may be going on depending on where your team is. So the colors coordinate. So are they in shock? How do you bring them into, that's where creative alignment comes into play. Are they still in denial? How do you maximize communication and share with them as much as possible to help them understand what is happening? They're looking for evidence this is true. Is this really happening? Some people, with their frustration, that's where you have to really be that person that motivates them and sparks the motivation for them, helps them to understand what's going on. If they're depressed, they're in a low mood, they really don't know how to get the work done. You have to prioritize at that time. Is the work more important, or do I deal with this situation? And then when people start to experiment in terms of, okay, maybe I can do this remote working, how is it going to work? That's when you start to even give them the tools to help them develop their capability. When people are in shock or denial, it's not the time for you to start saying, here's this remote working tool, this is how you need to do it, make sure you're reporting into Teams every day. You know, this is some training that you need to get onto. And then when they feel more comfortable about this situation and then the decision phase, that's when you can begin to share more with them. You can begin to expose them to more of what is happening. So understanding that people are at different places right now helps you better connect with them. And I'm spending a little bit of time on people first, because if you can work with people, if you can get people to buy into the change, if you can get people, you know, to be comfortable with you, if you can get people to trust you, it makes your job so much easier as a leader. Know your stakeholders. As a leader, you are not the person that does everything. So when you work with your stakeholders, or the first thing you do, and we do this in change management, I have a background in change management, I work as a change management consultant as well, is we do what you call your stakeholder assessment. So as a change leader, you may not go into the change assessment or impact assessment to know each of your stakeholders and the details of your stakeholders, but you need to begin to identify who are the key stakeholders I need to work with in order for this change to go through. When we look at our leaders in Canada, they're not doing this independently. Trudeau isn't doing this independently. Ford isn't doing this independently. John Tory isn't doing this independently. What are they doing? They're working with different stakeholder groups to know who are the important people. How do we work with the banks? How do we work with the associations? Who are the different people that are going to be impacted? They know that people who are independent workers are going to be impacted. People who are employees are going to be impacted, full-time staff. They know that big corporate organizations are being impacted, and how are they impacted? They know who are the different groups that are going to be impacted by this. And that's the same way you need to know your stakeholders to know who is being impacted, who do you need to work closely with, who are the people that are going to input into what you're doing. They know who their global stakeholders are that they need to work very closely with. They know who their stakeholders are, the hospitals, the doctors, the associations that need to bring in the knowledge that will help us take this crisis to a place where it's resolved. They know their stakeholders who is dependent on them. So even when they come forward and they're giving us all these financial solutions, it's not independent of Trudeau just saying, you know what, you banks, you have to do this. No, they're working collaboratively with the banks to say, how can we work together? So as a change leader, you are not responsible for the results. You are responsible for the people who produce the results. And that's where the difference between leadership and management comes in. With management, you're trying to say, oh, how can I calculate what the cost is of the loans, or giving giving organizations 75%. It's not your responsibility to do that calculation. It's not your responsibility to understand the financial impact. It's your responsibility to have the right people and the stakeholders who do the minutiae of the work and provide to you the information to make informed decisions. And then if you're saying that, but I don't have a team, I'm the one doing the work, but you still have stakeholders as colleagues who are very critical to making this, to driving the work forward. Who are your colleagues that you're working with that have the information on your team when you're leading and driving any type of change initiative or responsible for it? Who are the stakeholders that you can help your leader identify and say, hey, Stephanie, hey, Joe, you need to be working with these people. How can you help your leaders identify the stakeholders? How can you as a leader identify the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholder groups you need to be working with? So that is very critical, that you know your stakeholders and know that you come together as a whole. We all play a part, and the leader is the one driving the vision, inspiring people, motivating them to go forward. But he cannot do that alone, or she cannot do that alone. It comes with people working together. The next one I want to talk about is communication. I love this. As somebody who has worked in change for a long time, one of the things that I see is leaders not willing to communicate. They feel that, you know what, I don't think people need to know this. Do people really need to know this information? Is it valuable? Let's wait until the end. We don't want to scare them. But one of the things that I love when we see our leaders right now is that they are constantly sharing information with us. I'm going a little bit far. Okay. Let me stop here. I know I see some things in the chat box before I continue. Donna, are there any questions?
No questions yet. Just some comments that people do appreciate your presentation. So I think it's all good.
Okay. And if you have any questions as we go along, by all means, please share the questions, and I will take pauses at, you know, times here and there to just see what questions they are. So if you have any questions, by all means, just drop them in the chat there. I'll close this. Okay. So the next one I want to talk about is communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I'm so proud of our leaders when we see them, that they're out there every day communicating with us. Ford coming out with the right, with information to tell us this is the circumstances. You know what I love about Ford's communication? People might question that, why did he have to share the stats? Because those figures are pretty grim. But that is one of the easiest ways that we can overcome resistance to change. Because right now, what you see is that they're struggling to get people to do the simple things like stay at home. And that's the thing about change. Once you communicate change, there's some people that are quick to jump on board on that change. They understand why it needs to happen, and they're running with it. There's some people that they might still be in denial. This is not happening. You know, I don't know why they're telling us to stay at home. I have no symptoms. You know, all this is just a big conspiracy theory. So people are looking at this change in different ways. Again, it goes back to understanding that you're working with a diverse group of people, and people think about this differently. While some people have jumped on board, some people are still pushing back. And by communication, that is one of the easiest ways you can start to overcome resistance to change. Because the more you're able to communicate to people, people understand the gravity of the situation. So what did they try to do by communicating some of those figures? Is to tell people that we are facing a very grim situation if people do not stay at home. Trying to move them from denial to acceptance of the change and what is happening. But communication, as much as it needs to be open, it also needs to be very prudent. Yes, openly communicate with people, tell them where it is that we're going, what the situation is at the moment. But prudent, I bet you that it is not everything that they share with us. You have to determine what is the right thing to share with people at the right time. What do they really need to know? And I'm not saying hide information from people, but know how you position the information and when is the right time to share. But in absence of knowing when the right time is to share, doesn't mean you shouldn't share information until you wait to have everything. So looking at our government again as an example, with Trudeau, I love the fact that They were consistent with their information. They didn't wait to say, oh, until we have all the information before we tell people how they're going to help, or how we're going to help them. They put that information out, they get feedback from people. They're literally collaborating with us as a nation, as they communicate. Because when you communicate with people, guess what happens? You get feedback from people. And you know whether what you're doing is working or not. Imagine if they said, let's wait 3 weeks or 4 weeks until we release the package to tell people how we're going to support them. The feedback that they've been getting from the last 2 weeks to go back and tweak things and change things a little bit would not be happening, and will be suffering more loss. So as an example, they started off with saying we will support organizations up to 10% of their payroll. Organizations were able to come back and say, we can't afford 90%. They started to see the magnitude of organizations laying off staff and employees to know that they needed to do something more. And they increased that to 75%. So now when they're beginning to release the package and share it with people, you have organizations like Air Canada that is saying, okay, I'm going to employ people back. So that's some time they have saved. So that's where there's more value in sharing information piecemeal and getting people engaged and letting people know that something is happening and letting people know that you're doing something and that you care about them, than waiting till you have all your ducks in a row. So I see it as a very great example where, you know, our government is being open, our leaders have been open, they're being prudent, they're sharing us information in a timely manner, and they're being consistent. They're out there every day sharing information with us, giving us updates on Saturdays, on Sundays, they're there every day. There were some leaders in other countries globally where they weren't communicating, they weren't saying anything to people, they were saying, let's wait and see. And in the absence of information or you communicating with people, people make their assumptions. And there's an ability for assumptions and side conversations by the water cooler for people to run with that information when they hear nothing. The newspapers and social media has so much power today. So in your absence of you communicating, then people will run with their assumptions and share wrong information. So communicating is very important as a leader. Are you communicating with your people? Are you sharing with them what the strategy is, how you plan to resolve the issue? Are you sharing with them what the challenges are? When you communicate with people, people now realize this is the problem at hand and this is what we can do together. So communication enables buy-in. You have to be visible. You have to demonstrate presence. You have to show that you're engaged with what is happening. You have to leverage multiple channels of communication, because in the world of communication, there's this thing they say where you have to communicate with people 7 times before they get the message. So you have to be visible on different channels. We have Trudeau, who is in front of the news every day. We have Ford in front of it. We have John Tory in front of it. We just don't have them in front of the media giving us official updates. You have John Tory, he's on CP24 on the news channel, engaging with people, attending events, not events, but various types of conferences and video conferencing to share with people. You have them on social media, also talking, meeting people at where they are. So they're visible on social media, they're visible on our screens, they're visible on the newspaper. They demonstrate presence. They demonstrate that I care. I know what you're going through. Imagine a leader who is making decisions but you don't see them on TV every day, or you see them once in a while. You begin to feel like nothing is happening. But every day that you're present or have that open door policy, or you take a walk around the office and say, hey, how are you doing? How are things? You jump on a conference call that people weren't expecting and say, hey, I just wanted to pop in to say, hey, and see how you're doing. When you think to those charismatic leaders, or even think about some of the politicians globally, what is it they do when they're campaigning? They're present. There's a reason that they go to every city, because they want to demonstrate, I'm here for you. They want to demonstrate, I see you. So you need to be visible. And even if it is, you're thinking, okay, I'm not a leader, I'm not Trudeau, I don't have the position, I don't have the title. How do I demonstrate presence? By just being there for your leader, by turning it up and say, hey, what can I do for you? Hey, how can I support you on this? That's a different way to be visible. So you don't have to wait to be in front of the camera before you're visible, but you're there. You're there when they need you. You're even there to say, hey, you know, this is something that I came across. You know, this is something I can help you with. You're showing that you're engaged with the process and what is happening, and that you care. Are you responsive to the change as a leader? In a time of crisis, is not the time to start learning how to be a leader. You have to be a leader before the crisis. Because when a crisis comes, that is the time to act. That is the time where all the learning that you've done in the past comes into play. We do the Change Leadership Conference, and we have a few people on this webinar today who have attended our conference, and I appreciate each one of them because they see the vision in what it is that we do. Our core message in the Change Leadership is preparing leaders and organizations and professionals to respond to change better and faster in today's disruptive business environment. Our ethos is to prepare people for a time such as this. We prepare them to say, you don't have to wait for the change. The change is coming, and when it comes, will you be ready? Because in a crisis, it will be revealed who you are as a leader, how you respond to people, how you talk to people. Are you waiting for decision? Are you waiting for us to follow the process? Or are you being agile to say, you know what, this is how we need to respond very quickly? Because as in a time of crisis is not when you start trying to understand the processes. In a time of crisis, when you know which process matters or not. I see the chat bots go. Donna, do we have a question?
Nope, no questions, okay. Just more thumbs up for the presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate you guys. Keep them coming, keep them coming. You know, so in the time of crisis is when you have to be agile and not saying, oh, we have to follow this process in this way and in this manner. That's when you have to know what to circumvent. While some people were waiting for the government to say work from home, or the leaders to say work from home, don't come into the office, some other leaders have said, please work from home right now. Because we see the situation and we know that we see where it's coming. They're more forward thinking. They're very agile in their response. Some leaders were like, you know what, this is coming, so we need to put remote working in place. And they start getting their remote working and their structures set up. Some were so agile as leaders that their organization was already set up from a business continuity process to work immediately something like this happened. And some were very quick to adapt. Meanwhile, some were still holding on to the rail, like, no, we don't want this change, it can't happen. Some people were already adapting their processes in the ways they serve their customer. And who wins right now? Is it the people that were quick to adapt to the change and right now they're settled into what is our temporary new normal to know how to respond to their clients' needs? Or is it the people who right now are only coming into it and saying, okay, I guess this is what our new normal is, and trying to respond to it. As a change leader, you need to be proactive. So wherever you are as a change leader, at the top, in the middle, at the grassroots, you need to be proactive about saying, how do we deal with this situation? And the great thing about being a change leader, wherever you are, is that you get recognized as a leader who they can promote. Because when you're doing your different things, or you're being proactive, or you're being agile, or you're quick to adapt, somebody is looking at you. So you may not be an executive right now, you may not be a VP right now, or that may be your role. But if you want to progress in your career, if you want to progress in your organization, if you want a light to be shined on you, you have to be a leader now. You don't wait until you become a leader before you start to demonstrate what it means to be a leader. You become a leader now, and then people recognize you as a leader to be able to do to be able to step into the position. Because when they're assessing you, they're not saying, oh, I know when this person becomes a leader, they're going to be able to do this. They're going to say, you know, I see the potential in this person. I see what they've been able to do. I see that they're always quick to step up to the mark. I see that when we put in new processes, they're such a change champion, they jump on it and they're able to make it happen. And these should become natural abilities within you. And the example we see in our case study right now we're going through is our leaders are being quick to act. They're putting things in place. They're jumping on where can we get masks? You know, where can we turn around organizations or manufacturers to start producing something? But in the meantime, while we're doing this, let's see where we can source and buy masks from. So they're adapting quickly. They're changing things quickly. They're seeing what it means to make these things happen. Okay, next one. And don't know if there's anything, just let me know, because I might not know when to stop. And then we also need to collaborate as leaders. When I'm leading change initiatives and I go into an organization, it's so interesting that I find some leaders saying, oh no, don't talk to that group yet. Oh no, don't communicate with that group yet. Oh no, we don't need to reach out to them yet. You know, let's wait till we get to the end when we have our solution ready, and then we can speak to them. I'm like, you want to wait until you have a solution before you collaborate with your stakeholders? That leads nowhere. That is a recipe for disaster. If you want your project or your initiative or your disaster, your crisis to last as long as possible, the secret ingredient to that is do not collaborate. If you want to end it quicker, if you want it to the best solutions as quickly as possible, collaborate. Because like we mentioned in the beginning, we do not have all the answers. It is not your responsibility to know the answer and to know the solution. It is not your responsibility to figure out how masks work. It is not your responsibility to figure out how the technology will work or not. It's not your responsibility to do what HR does when you are in technology, and it's not your responsibility in technology to figure out what marketing is doing, and it's not your responsibility as a leader to know the minutiae of what all of your teams are doing. You need to collaborate. And when you collaborate, that is where you get stakeholder buy-in. When you call the top leaders of banks and say, this is the issue and crisis we have together, how can we work together? Then you come up with solutions. When you call all the heads of all the retail, the big grocery retail organizations and say, this is the problem we have at hand, then you can determine how to collaborate to ensure that there's a consistent supply. Then you know that then you understand what their distribution system is like and who they rely on, so that you ensure that you're not blocking those barriers from happening. You don't go and close all the borders, not realizing that your retailers are depending on one other person or the other. you know, when the at the start of the crisis and the lockdown, and Ford released the list of essential services, there were quite a few people that pushed back, and there were comments like, oh, there's so many businesses that are still open. Why are some of these businesses open? Some of these don't need to be essential services for it to stay open. And I agree that there may be some things that may not be seen as essential, but that list wasn't made by Ford just sitting and thinking, I think this should be open, I think this should not be open. It was by collaborating with a whole bunch of people and saying that, you know what? If you want me to manufacture masks, you need to ensure that you're keeping open the person who produces the glue. If you need me to provide hand sanitizers, you have to ensure that I'm still connected with the person who produces ethanol. If you need me to keep my grocery stores running, you need to ensure that the car shops, the repair shops who service our motors or who will help support our staff to get into work on their cars are open. If you need me to still leave the if you need the hospitals to still run and the retail stores to still run, you need to ensure that there's transportation services that will bring them into work. But you only know those answers when you're able to collaborate. And when you invite people into the conversation, then they're more committed to the solution. Just think to yourself, how does it feel when you're a dictator to say, do this, as opposed to when you're saying, how do we do this? And that's what a change leader does by bringing in people and collaborating with them. A change leader has to be decisive and take ownership. Where are we? Okay. No. Why did my poll come up? Okay. A change leader has to be decisive and take ownership. In the absence of making a decision, you have made a decision already. When you delay a decision has been made already. Because in a time of crisis, time is currency. There's a need to act very quickly. And as a leader, you can only be decisive and act very quickly when you have developed your leadership skills, because you come from a place of intuition. So leaders are not made overnight. It's a continuous process. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be a better leader, you need to put yourself in positions where you are learning to be a leader. You need to put yourself in positions where you're volunteering. You need to put yourself in positions where you put up your hand on the team and say, you know what, yes, I'll do that. You need to look at the situation and say, you know what, I think this is the best way to go forward. You need to be open to share your thoughts and your feelings. Because the more you're able to open up in a meeting with your colleagues and speak to people, the more confidence you have in the decisions that you're making. When they ask, oh, what do you think about this? You say, oh, I don't know, maybe. You never get the opportunity to be able to share your thoughts and your feelings and what you're thinking. And you don't know whether you don't get to test that muscle of decision making. So are you waiting until you get to a place of crisis before you test your muscle in terms of how you make decisions? You struggle. Or are you learning to make decisions now so that when you get to a time of crisis, you can instantly know how to make the right decision? And you know what? You're not always going to get it right. One of the things that I feel should have been done is maybe we should have been mandated to lock down more services, much sooner. But again, I'm not a leader. So when I say I'm not a leader, I'm not the leader I'm not in Trudeau's shoes or Doug Ford's shoes or John Tory's shoes to know what needs to happen. But I'll tell you at least some of the decisions we had to make in our organization with the change leadership. We had a master class that was planned for April. We had our annual conference that was planned for May. We had master classes in the summer. We already had events we put in place, we'd hired, we paid for items, we'd spent money already. And then all of a sudden we're told there's the potential to stay at home. So this was before we'd been mandated to stay at home. And we're thinking, what does this mean for our events? The first decision for the masterclass in April was easily made for us. I would say for that one, we weren't as decisive in an agile manner, because while we were still thinking, should we not do our event in April, our partner, the venue where we're doing said, you know what, we're canceling all events. So that was an easy decision, and it was a low risk decision for us as well. But our higher stakes was the conference. That's where we'd invested a lot more money, a lot more energy. And, you know, we had a lot more people registered for the event, and we had to make a decision in as early as March to say, are we going to hold this event in May or not? And we made a quick decision to say, you know what, we care about people. We know that our community, even if this crisis and pandemic was to be over first week of April, which is not, are they in the right frame of mind to be attending an event in May? Because to us, our events are very, very important. We hold, not just our events, we have what we call our 360 degree experience for our conferences, meaning that it's not just our participants, it's our vendors, it's our speakers, it's our volunteers, it's our team. So we had to think about them holistically and say, would they be ready to attend a conference in May? And that's where we had to make a decision. But I'm so happy we made that decision without delay, because 2 weeks after we made that decision, John Tory comes and says all events and conferences up until June, it's canceled. But I want to believe that us making that decision ahead of time said to our community that we're thinking of you, and we're not just postponing this event because we have a directive to postpone this event. We're postponing this event because we thought about you in advance. So as a leader, are you thinking in advance and making the right decision as quickly as possible for your stakeholders and for your teams and for the people around you? You have to be emotionally intelligent. What does this mean? It means managing yourself. It means knowing when to speak, what to say, what to communicate, how you communicate it, your body language when you're communicating it. It means managing your own well-being as well. Because if you do not manage your own well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, you are on a short leash, and you will respond in the most unexpected ways. And you know what? This I am guilty as charged. I had a terrible experience where I was with a client and I wasn't focused on my own well-being or how I was managing the situation mentally, and I just kept on holding back. Let's just say it had all kinds of wrongs to do with it. And at one point in time, I feel I just said the wrong thing at the right thing at the wrong time in the wrong way. So what I said was still valid, but because I wasn't managing myself emotionally, I was not able to communicate my message across properly. So who are you as a leader? Are you emotionally intelligent with your decisions, with your communications, with your body language, with how you're responding to people, with how you're treating people? A great change leader is able to demonstrate emotional intelligence. Are you authentic? Are you authentic as a leader to tell your people that, you know what, I don't have all the answers right now, but we're going to do this together? I mean, you can drop a comment in there, but how many people sense authenticity in their leaders and people who are just reading the script? How many people can tell the difference? When somebody is reading a script versus when you know this person is really has my back. When you're authentic as a leader, you're more able to build trust with people. When you're authentic as a leader, people know we're in this together. When people feel you always have the right answers, you know what to say at the right time, you always have the solutions, they begin to feel, okay. But when they see, you know what, this person has a human side to them. So the example I gave you earlier, where on a Thursday, the leader was saying, oh, make sure you check in every 30 minutes to see whether they're working. Then on Monday, he comes and starts saying, oh, you know what, I just want to do a check-in with everybody. I hope you're doing okay. I want to see how things are going. The team just immediately thought this is a script. There is no way they are going to be able to build trust with this person to know that he's got my back, she's got my back. Right now, I kind of like trust my leaders because I'm seeing them come and own up to their mistakes, and they're saying to Trudeau, why is it all of a sudden you're saying 75% and earlier you were saying 10%? And he's like, because we're learning along the way. And when I use the examples of our leader and father and Trudeau and Tory, I'm not saying they're perfect, but what I am doing is using examples for you to show where they've been able to do some things well. Because when you tell me as a leader, you know what, I messed up, then I say this person is human. So how authentic are you as a leader will determine how you're able to build trust with your team. And when you're able to build trust with your team trusts you as well. And when they trust you as well, they're more open with you. They give more of themselves to you because they know you have got my back. Are you able to build trust with your people, that what you say to them in one room, when they're not there, you're still saying the same thing about them? And sometimes it's even difficult to know where somebody is being authentic or not, because people have this down to a T in terms of reading from a script. I remember speaking to two leaders at one time and reaching out to them on wanting something. And I went to this other person of position and authority, and I was speaking to them about something I needed. And I could just read the script. I could just see that they were giving me a script. I left there questioning myself. I said, what am I doing here? And I went to another leader with the same ask. His attitude, his genuineness, the way he responded to me did not even seem like he had any type of ulterior motive. I really felt like crying when I was speaking to the other leader. My heart was overwhelmed. Honestly, this other leader could have asked me to do anything, and I was willing to do it for him. Because he was just open, he was just himself. There was no script involved. Are you empowering your team as a leader? Are you giving them the tools to work with? Are you saying that I trust you? Are you saying that I recognize the brilliance in you? I recognize the work that you're doing. Are you saying that I celebrate you? How you empower your team will make the difference to the work that is done. Because when you're in a crisis, you cannot be everywhere at the same time. And how do you empower your team? You share the vision with them. You share with them the why. You share information with your team members. Because guess what? You cannot come alone to the podium if you don't have your team behind you doing the work. Yes, we see Ford come and give his daily announcements. We see Trudeau come and give his daily announcements. But we also see that the health minister is empowered to give those, to also take ownership. He and there it is. They have all empowered their team members and their different units to be able to come forward and speak to the situation. What you see when you see the different leaders is you see ownership of the responsibility. When you see the leaders of the different provinces, you see ownership of the situation. They're not all waiting until we see what Trudeau is doing. They are taking responsibility in their different areas to make the right decision because they are empowered to act. Are you empowering your team to act? Are you delegating to them? Are you equipping them with the power that they need to be able to step up in your absence and make decisions? Are you recognizing them? When you, it's not accident that we recognize and celebrate the nurses, the frontline staff, you know, the people in the grocery store, because you empower them to say, I feel valued. The work I am doing matters. When a colleague does something for you, do you recognize and celebrate them in front of the leaders to say, this is what this person has done? When you can empower the people around you, they will step up and stand up for you. In one of the past roles I've had is as a project manager. And as a project manager, I did not feel that I had to make every decision on my team. I empowered my team to do the work. I would go to the architect and say, what needs to be done here? They did not have to wait for me to turn up in order for them to go forward and make that decision. They did not say, Yvonne is not here, so we can't do anything. And when it was time to say, oh, this project was successful, I said, it's my team. It is not about me. So what are you doing to empower your colleagues and your team members and the people around you? Because when you do it together, you go further. Are you visionary? Are you forward thinking? Do you have the big picture perspective? Because, you know, as human beings, when we're in a time of crisis, it's human nature and it's our brain's response to go into self-protection, to think about the problems we have, to just react in the minute. But when you're a leader, you have to be able to step out of the crisis. You have to be able to step out of the picture frame and be able to see, what does all of this mean? You have to be 1, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of everybody. As a leader, you have to just think it's not just right now about the crisis, about people dying, about people getting infected. It's not just about people out of jobs now. You have to be able to think 1 year ahead, 2 years ahead. What does this mean for the economy? What does this mean for people's lives? The organizations who have been more visionary and more forward-thinking and more business and big picture perspective had business continuity plans in place. They had already built trust with their employees to be able to say, go ahead, go work from home. The trust was there already. Unlike organizations like, oh, I don't trust my employees to work from home. If you don't trust your employees to work from home, how would they trust you as a leader? Trust doesn't start in isolation. If you want trust, you have to trust as well. The organizations who are being successful now is as a result of the values and the cultures which they had created, because that is what is driving the organizations forward. It's not just suddenly we need to put the culture in place where people know how to work from home. We need to put the culture in place where people are collaborative. We need to put the culture in place where people people go beyond the call of duty. No, you create all of that for a time such as this. You know, one of the things people say, and I almost dare to differ a bit, people say there's no way we would have prepared for this kind of crisis. I agree, there's no way we would have prepared for this kind of crisis, but we could have prepared for this type of crisis. In 2000, it was 2004, 2005, Bill Gates, not Bill Gates, this was George Bush talked about the pandemic. He said, let us prepare for a time when we would have a pandemic flu that could be explosive. He talked about it, but sometimes we feel, you know what, it's not affecting me now, so I don't need to do anything. Bill Gates, when the Ebola crisis happened, spoke about it and said, you know what, a time is going to come when there might be a pandemic that is bigger than this. We need to start preparing for it. We need to get more research done. We need to start to put things in place. But you know what? It was just a clap, clap, clap. That's a nice speech. But how many organizations took action? So yes, we could not have seen this pandemic happen, but we could have started to prepare for a time such as this. And it's the same thing in our conferences when we talk about disruptive technologies, we talk about AI, we talk about fourth industrial revolution, we talk about robotics. We have people say to us, oh no, it's not now, it's still very far off. No, it doesn't affect me. And the interesting thing is when you have people say they're not even doing it in my organization. And I know for a fact that in their organization, they're already implementing technologies such as that. So people feel that they are separate from it. It's not me, it's not happening. But as a leader, you have to think ahead to say something such as this could happen. Technology is changing. The future of work is changing. What does this mean for my organization? Things may be where it is now, but what happens in the future? How do I prepare for changes? You have to be visionary. You have to be forward thinking. You have to have big picture perspective. So my question to you is, how responsive are you to the change in today's fast-paced and disruptive business environment? Are you ready for the changes that are coming? Are you prepared as a leader? Are you prepared? Are you responsible? Are you waiting to react? Are you taking control of your team, your organization? Are you taking control of your career, where it's headed? Are you taking control of what is going to, or what all of this is going to mean in the aftermath? Are you waiting till the pandemic and the lockdown is over before you start to plan ahead? Or are you thinking now, what does this mean? And how do I start to prepare now for what may be coming? Are you forward thinking, or are you still in the crisis now? I'm literally at the end of this, but I want to share these resources to you. So if you go to the changeleadership.com, we have so many resources that go into depth in some of the things that I've been talking about to help you be a thought leader, especially on the thought leadership on leading change. So do check it out and see how that can help you. And I wasn't even sure what my next slide was going to be, but so I'm at the end of this, and I know I've taken some time. So